Hello, and welcome to Silver Creek High School. I'm Assistant Principal Hannah Oliver, and I want to thank you for subbing with us today. Everything you need to know will be shared with you in this video. When you arrive at the high school, park in the visitors lot, come to door A and ring the buzzer on the right. Then come inside and speak to our front office staff and let them know you're here to sub. Lunch is determined by your third block class. So, based upon whose third block class you are subbing for, you will find your name on the list and it will tell you what lunch you have. You can also find this posted outside your teacher's door as well. The time for lunch on regular days and 2-hour delays are first lunch from 10:40 to 11:10, second lunch from 11:15 to 11:45, third lunch from 11:50 to 12:20, and finally, fourth lunch from 12:25 to 12:55. Times for lunch on Wednesday is earlier than other days. On these days, first lunch runs from 10:25 to 10:55, second lunch from 11 to 11:30, third lunch from 11:40 to 12:10, and finally, fourth lunch from 12:15 to 12:45.
When you come into the main office, these are the people who you might see.
I'm Braylee Wyatt. I am the Principal Secretary here at Silver Creek High School.
My name is Ms. Caldwell, and I am the Front Office Secretary.
I'm Heather Roundtree. I'm the Attendance Secretary, and I take attendance.
Hello, my name is Jerry Schweinhart. I'm the school nurse.
Hi, I'm Marna Johnson. I'm the permanent sub here at Silver Creek High School. Classes will start when the bell rings at 7:40. You should have been provided a blue binder with the students' rosters and everything in it that you need throughout the day. Classes at Silver Creek High School alternate every day between blue and orange days. Students have different classes depending on what rotation day it is. On blue days, the second block of the day is a study block, which we call flex. On these days, they are to do the work that they have missed from previous days or getting work done throughout the day that they need to get done. It's just their time to catch up. Every Wednesday is an early release day. The classes are shortened for 10 minutes, and the end of the day on dismissal is at 2:10 rather than 2:25. The students will leave early. After taking attendance, give the roster to a student to give to Ms. Roundtree in the main office, and she will mark the attendance for the kids. Oftentimes, teachers leave their schoolwork on Schoology. It's a program they will access on their Chromebooks.
Hi, I'm Casey Drain, the Director of Health for Silver Creek Schools. We have a nurse in every one of our Silver Creek school buildings, and I oversee those nurses. We have a clinic at each school so that we can see any students who become sick or injured during the school day. We're here to handle their medical needs and respond to any medical emergencies that occur on campus. I'm going to provide a very brief basic overview of what to do in case of an emergency. But please remember you're not alone in these situations, and we are here to help. Many students have individualized health plans, and we even have some stocked emergency medications. So it's imperative that you refer and rely on your school nurse. We're here to help you. First, we'll talk about cardiac emergencies. Every school on campus has an automated external defibrillator, or AED. So it's very important that you learn where the AED is in your building. Here at Silver Creek High School, they're located in the high school gymnasium, outside the auxiliary gym, and outside Ms. Oliver's office in the main office. Next, we'll talk about how to help someone who might be having a seizure. First, ease the person to the floor. Second, turn the person gently onto one side. This will help the person to breathe. Clear the area around the person of anything hard or sharp. This can prevent injury. Call the nurse at extension 3007 or call the office to alert the nurse. Do not hold the person down or try to stop their movements, and do not put anything in the person's mouth. Again, remember, we are here to help. Next, we're going to talk about diabetic emergencies, and the main thing that I would like for you to be aware of is signs and symptoms of low blood sugar. Hunger, feeling weak or shaky and or looking pale, headache, inattention, and or confusion or dizziness can be signs of a low blood sugar. Symptoms of very low blood sugar may include nausea or loss of appetite, slurred speech or blurred vision, seizure activity, being clammy or sweating, a loss of consciousness, or being unresponsive. The main thing I would like for you to remember is not to send these students to the clinic alone, but rather have them accompanied or call the nurse at your particular clinic and have them come to you. For asthma, if a student is complaining of a cough, wheeze, chest tightness, or shortness of breath, it's best to have the nurse evaluate the student. So either have them accompanied to the clinic or call your nurse to come to the student. And lastly, I just want to briefly mention anaphylaxis, which is a potentially life-threatening emergency which occurs with a severe allergic reaction. We do have stock epinephrine at every school. It's simply important for you to recognize signs and symptoms and know when to call for help. Some of these symptoms include hives, itching, flushed skin, a swollen tongue or throat, wheezing or trouble breathing, or nausea or vomiting. It's important to act quickly, so again, call your nurse immediately or your school or the office staff so they can alert us. Again, remember that we're here to help you, so the main takeaway is knowing that we're here and to call your nurse for any medical needs. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Neil Losi. I'm one of the 2 assistant principals here at Silver Creek High School. We appreciate you coming and helping us by being a substitute teacher and filling that role today. Just a few things I want to talk about regarding school safety. Your role as a substitute teacher really relates to 2 areas with school safety. Knowing the day-to-day operations of what's expected, and I'll talk more about that in a minute, and then if there was any kind of drill or an actual emergency response you would need to help students with, knowing the terms or what's expected or how to locate the information that the teacher would leave for you. And so those are the 2 big areas that I'd like to talk about today. Regarding day-to-day operations, some of the highlights that you need to know. Number 1, the classroom door of the classroom that you're subbing in. And so we ask that the classroom door remain locked at all times. Now, there's a magnet that you could use that you could put in the door frame that would keep the door from being latched, where students can come in and out. But at this time, the door has to be locked, where it wouldn't need a key or a button or anything to turn it. But you can use a magnet if that classroom has a magnet to keep it unlatched, not propped. Or if you'd rather just keep the door completely latched and closed and locked, that is also fine, but you'll have to let students come back in as they leave. As far as exterior doors, you shouldn't have any role with exterior doors unless you're subbing for PE possibly, but every exterior door in the building needs to be closed and locked and never propped. If you see a propped door, please close it. If you see students that are letting anyone in a door other than the main entrance, please address it and bring them to the office. We want to make sure that every exterior door is locked, closed, and never propped at all times. When you're here as a sub, when you check in with Mrs. Wyatt, she may have given you a classroom key and a fob that if you need to get in and out during your day, you can do that and you can open a classroom door. Please make sure you do not give that to anyone else other than when you're returning it to Mrs. Wyatt. Do not give your keys to students, do not give your fob to students at any time, and make sure when you leave, at the end of the day, you do return that. Primarily, your role as a substitute teacher is not only supervision of students, but that is one of the main roles. You have to make sure that if you are given an expected duty and time of a classroom to be in, or an AM duty or a lunch duty, that you are there where you're expected to be supervising students. It's important for the school body that we have you there, and that's one of your main roles. In the classroom, if you see anything that is dangerous or you feel like could be an unsafe environment, please let us know because that's another aspect of duty of care with supervision. But just be sure that you're always with the students that we believe in your role that we've given you, you are expected to be with. Do not leave them unattended. And if you have an issue, please contact the main office. With our safety plan in the building, we have response to any given scenario that might happen, whether it's a drill or an unplanned event. We have 5 responses that we use, and those are the terms that we use over the PA or in an email if we're going to have an emergency response to something that's happening possibly outside the building or in the building. The first one to be aware of is called evacuation or evacuate. You might know this most familiarly in the past as a fire drill, or if there was a fire. We don't use evacuate only for fire. There's other scenarios where we would need to leave the building on short notice. In the case of an evacuation, your role is to go with the students. There should be attendance sheets in the binder that you have. And when you evacuate in general, you locate the closest exit to get out of the building. With fire, and we do it with any scenario when you leave the building, we ask that students get 100 feet from the building and not block any roadways. If you're evacuating with the rest of the school, you will see other teachers out there that would obviously assist you if you needed it, and you can kind of see the locations they get to. But the short of it is, if you have to evacuate, go with the students to the closest exit to get out of the building. If there was ever a scenario where you were in a classroom and something happened in the classroom that posed a safety risk in the room, like in a science lab, if something happened that there was smoke or you need to get students out, you have the right as the supervisor of those students to say, students, we need to evacuate the room. And you would take them out in the hallway or get them down to an area and let the office know right away. So evacuation in general is for the entire building, but you never know what could happen in a room, and in a scenario you do have the ability to evacuate the classroom if you needed to do that. Another response for our standard response protocol we call shelter. This is probably most familiar for a tornado warning, taking shelter in an area that doesn't have windows or is unsafe. In our building, most of our shelter areas are one of the locker rooms or possibly a restroom. You should have these locations also posted in the classroom, but if there was a shelter, whether it's through a drill or an actual event, you would take students from your classroom and get to a shelter area. I think every shelter area that we have is with students from another classroom, so you wouldn't be alone in that. And there should be another teacher if you're in a locker room that has keys to let you in that locker room. But typically that's for tornado warning, but the language that we use is no longer the event, it's more the response, and so it's referred to as shelter. Our third response from standard response protocol is what we call a lockdown. You've probably heard this term before. A lockdown is not typically used very often. This is an emergency situation where we need to make sure that every person in the building gets behind a locked door with lights out and is quiet, so that they're safe from whatever the threat may be in the building. Your role in a lockdown would be most likely you would hear an announcement over the PA or possibly an email that a lockdown needs to happen immediately. And as I touched on earlier, the locked door policy, that's one of the reasons we have that. So if your door was locked but unlatched, you would want to remove the magnet as fast as possible. If there's any students near your classroom in the hallways or closing the door, you could quickly bring them in, but really the priority is getting your door closed and locked. At that point, you would want to turn off the lights in the classroom and instruct students to hide somewhere in the room that's out of sight and be quiet until further notice, essentially. Lockdown is something we don't expect to use very often or hopefully ever, but it's important that you understand what your role would be should that be needed. It's very possible that you may substitute teach on a day that has a lockdown drill. If that's the case, you'd have information as you picked up your binder, and you would go through that same process, but we would make sure that you knew it was a drill and not a real event if that's the case. In addition to the lockdown, one addition to that is that there is policy in place that in the event of a real emergency where you are trying to take steps to protect yourself or students, you may evacuate, you may barricade, you may resist as needed in the event that there was a real emergency where people are in danger in the building. So lockdown is what would be called on the PA, or the action that would be given to the staff. But in a real emergency, you have options such as evacuate or barricading the door somehow, whatever you would feel is necessary as the adult who is in charge and really in charge of the safety of those students, doing anything you can at that point. So that's in addition to the lockdown in the event there was a real emergency. The fourth option for the standard response protocol is called secure. This is probably one that's used more commonly than others, but it often gets confused with a lockdown and can be alarming if you don't understand the difference. So with a secure, we're referring to the exterior doors, and they're always secure, but if there's a secure that's called, it means that there's some general safety concern in the community, possibly nearby, where we're just taking a little bit of extra caution with who we let in and out of our doors. We want to make sure all the doors are locked, which they're supposed to be at all times anyway. So if you hear a secure that's called on the PA or in an email, it is not a lockdown. It means there's something going on outside the school. We're just having a heightened level of security. It's usually the police have let us know that something's happening in the community, and so we go into a secure. The fifth option for the standard response protocol is called a hold. And that's referring to what we would do with the students essentially. So if students were in a passing period or lunch was happening, or even if it's just a regular class of time and there's some concern that increase the safety level, or possibly we're doing a pretty serious investigation of a report that's happened, we may go into what's called a hold. That means that students don't come and go from class as normal. You would be instructed to make sure that all students remain in your room, and you would close your door and make sure it's locked and latched, but you would try and conduct business as usual in the room with students continuing to work on whatever they were doing or whatever the plans the teacher may have left. If students are out and about during a hold, we may instruct them to go back to their room at that time. And it's not cause for alarm necessarily. I know with any kind of safety measure it can be alarming, but it may be that there's a student who, has an emotional outburst in the hallway, and we're just trying to give them some privacy and address it the way that's best. And so in that case, we call a hold so that students aren't coming and going and passing by and seeing it. It doesn't mean that there's an emergency situation. It just means that there's something that we're taking care of and need to address. And at that time, it'd be best for students to be in the room, not out in the hallways. And so again, that's referred to as a hold. On a given day, if you're substitute teaching, there may be a drill, a planned drill, could be an evacuation drill, could be a shelter drill. If that's the case, we will have information for you in the folder and available in the morning when you pick up your binder and information from Mrs. Wyatt. We do try to make sure that all the substitutes are aware, so please check the information that you have in your binder. And if you have any questions on that given day, you can reach out to Mrs. Wyatt first, and if not, I'll help you. I kind of lead the safety in the building, and we want to make sure everybody knows what to expect. There may be a time that when you are substitute teaching that, not to be hypothetical, but something happens where you suspect that a student may be abused or neglected, even at home, or you may not even know. You could see bruises, you could hear them talking to another student about something, that if it's a concern to you enough that you think, is this student being abused by someone, or are they being neglected from what they said, then you have a duty as an adult in Indiana to refer that information to the Department of Child Services. So if that ever happens, you need to contact the main office as soon as possible and tell them that you have a concern with a student that you need to share with an administrator, and we will come talk with you. But what would happen at that point is, it is the duty of the person that has the suspected information about a student being abused or neglected. It is their duty to report it to the Department of Child Services. It's not someone else's. However, if something happens while you're here at work and you have a concern about a student and you share it with us, you need to do so immediately. And then if it does need to be referred to the Department of Child Services, we will help you do that. Because most people have never done that before and it can be a little unnerving, but we will help you do that. But you have to understand that if you hear something about a student has been abused or harmed in some way where you suspect they have been abused, it's your duty to report it. We will assist you in doing that, but you have to make sure that we are aware and can help you immediately. In a similar vein of that, with reporting to DCS, you may experience something in a classroom where you have concerns about a student with expressing wanting to hurt themselves, or something where you might be concerned that are they suicidal. Again, in that case, you would want to reach out immediately to the office to reach one of our school counselors. And if you don't reach anyone that can take that information, please continue to try to contact someone as soon as possible, because we need to get that information and we want to get with the student as soon as possible. So anytime you have a concern with something with a student wanting to hurt themselves in some way, please reach out to the office immediately. So that's the basic information regarding school safety. If you have any concerns about anything, please reach out to the office. Again, I want to thank you for being here. Your role is very important in the school day. We care a lot about our students. Again, thank you. WTL.